Greetings ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mangs and today I'm going to be talking about the evolution of a very specific game mechanic in the Fire Emblem series, the weapon triangle. While it may not be entirely logical, it certainly is an important part of the Fire Emblem series. The weapon triangle adds a layer of depth and strategy to the already complex game, giving you an advantage based on what weapons you use in different situations. The concept is simple. Swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. It's basically rock, paper, scissors, just way cooler and much more medievally. In this video, we're gonna have us a bit of a Fire Emblem related history lesson, and take a look at how the weapon triangle has evolved and changed from game to game. The weapon triangle was introduced for the first time in Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War. This game is also where it was the most unbalanced, giving you a 20% accuracy boost if you had the weapon triangle advantage, and giving you a 20% accuracy penalty if you were at a disadvantage. Fire Emblem 4 also introduced a magical version of the weapon triangle, commonly referred to as the Trinity of Magic, with the three kinds of magic: fire, thunder, and wind. Fire would beat wind, wind would beat thunder, and thunder would beat fire. However, Fire Emblem 4 had not 3, but 5 types of magic, as dark and light magic were also a thing back then. In terms of the triangle, however, dark and light were simply considered as superior and beat all the 3 other types respectively, while remaining neutral only against each other. In Fire Emblem 5, Thracia 776, the weapon triangle took a massive hit in terms of its severity. Where the bonuses and penalties had once been 20%, they were now nerfed down to 5% respectively. Suddenly, the weapon triangle didn't matter so much anymore, and it became nothing more than a small bonus that you didn't really need to pay much attention to. Then came the Game Boy Advanced era, and Fire Emblem 6 Binding Blade made some new changes to the weapon triangle. Firstly, its bonuses and penalties were now doubled in terms of accuracy, from 5 up to 10% respectively. But Binding Blade also introduced an entirely new concept. The weapon triangle would now also affect damage dealt. If you were at a weapon triangle advantage, you would now deal 1 extra point of damage to your enemy. Respectively, if you were at a weapon triangle disadvantage, you would now deal 1 less damage to your enemy instead. Now this made the weapon triangle much more complex, because as we all know, 1 point of damage in Fire Emblem can often make the difference between life and death. Binding Blade was also the first game to introduce Reaver weapons, also known to some as reverse weapons. The Axe Reaver, Lance Reaver, and Sword Reaver respectively were weapons that reverse the weapon triangle, allowing units to gain advantages they would normally not have access to. That's not all they did, however. Reaver weapons were also a lot more severe in the bonuses and penalties they incurred. A weapon triangle advantage with a Reaver weapon would give the wielder a whopping 30% boost in accuracy and a damage bonus of 2. This was also a double-edged sword, however, as the same penalties would apply if a Reaver weapon found itself at a disadvantage. Reaver weapons added a lot of depth to the game, as they could also appear on enemies. Failing to properly scout the enemy's equipment could easily get your units killed. Then came along Fire Emblem 7 Blazing Sword. This game took the weapon triangle system from Binding Blade and upped it a little bit. The damage bonus and penalties remained the same, but instead of a 10% bonus/penalty to hits, it was now changed to 15%. Fire Emblem 8 The Sacred Stones followed suit without any changes to the system at all, although it did introduce monsters with natural weapons, which were completely neutral to the weapon triangle. Then came Fire Emblem 9 Path of Radiance on the GameCube, and made some radical changes to the system once again. In terms of numbers, it reversed the triangle back to the Binding Blade standards of 10%, and the damage bonus and penalty at 1. However, Path of Radiance also brought back the old magic triangle from the Super Nintendo era, by introducing fire, thunder, and wind magic back to the game. Dark magic, on the other hand, did not appear in this game, so light magic simply stayed neutral, having no bonuses or penalties against any of the other magic types. Fire Emblem X Radiant Dawn did not make any changes to the numbers. That is, unless the player decided to play on Maniac mode, which actually removed the weapon triangle entirely. This was probably done to make the game more difficult, as the bonuses would usually tilt in the player's advantage. This removal of one of the series' most fundamental mechanics was not particularly well received by the player base. Radiant Dawn also reintroduced dark magic to the game once more, resulting in there suddenly being two magic triangles, the good old Fire, Wind, Thunder triangle, as well as the Anima Light Dark triangle from the Game Boy Advanced era. Then Fire Emblem 11 Shadow Dragon came along, and was the first game to introduce a weapon triangle system that interacted with weapon ranks. The system of swords, axes, and lances didn't change, but the bonuses and penalties would now be affected by your unit's weapon rank compared to the enemies. If you had a weapon rank of E or D, you would get a 5% bonus to accuracy during a weapon triangle advantage. If your weapon rank was C, B, or A, however, that bonus would increase to 10%. At A rank, you would also gain the additional benefit of +1 damage. Needless to say, this would also be reversed against you, meaning enemy weapon ranks were actually much more significant. Basically, what this system did was making the weapon triangle less severe in the early game for both sides, and then more significant towards the late game. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon did not have a magic weapon triangle, as all tomes were neutral towards each other. Fire Emblem 12, Heroes of Light and Shadow, followed the exact same system as its prequel. Fire Emblem 13 Awakening copied much of the same system Fire Emblem 11 and 12 had utilized, but added another layer of bonuses and penalties at A rank, giving the unit with a weapon triangle advantage a 15% bonus to accuracy instead of merely a 10% bonus to accuracy. The magic triangle was still absent. So that's a short look at how the weapon triangle has changed throughout Fire Emblem history. Which of them did you prefer? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching this video. Please consider leaving a like and a comment if you found it entertaining. It really helps out the channel a lot. As always, my name has been Manx, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.